right. Wow. My production value is almost slacked. But listen, before we start this recap again, now we recapped it probably very accurately on Saturday for the most part, but we're going to have on a couple of great guests. I just want you to see Steve Cully's Deion Sanders look, okay, with the sunglasses in for his conference call right now, his podcast.
Maryland just scored again.
They scored again?
I think they scored again. I'm incognito. I have to be incognito. I came out and I boldly predicted that the Connecticut Huskies would send a message with this game, and they sent a message. It just may not have been the right one.
Yeah, what message was that?
The message is that we need to get better players. We need to come together with the 50 new players that we do have and figure this thing out. Like you said, what we can do, what we can't do.
I'll tell you this. So, did you watch the LSU USC game?
Yes, I did.
So, what stood out to me was USC's speed, which they have done a great job of acquiring athletes, and because of the fact that they're now in a bigger conference than they were able to upgrade and even get some players on defense, which USC did not have last year with Caleb Williams. Okay.
Right.
They've gotten some more players, and now Lincoln Riley upsetting LSU was a huge win for them, because I would have never thought that LSU would, and LSU's good, would lose to USC just off of physicality and the fact that USC's defense was, and that's what the transfer portal, when done in a bigger conference with more opportunities, with money raised, can begin to change. When they were in Pac-12, they were able to get Caleb Williams money. They obviously USC has a big alumni. Now they're going to what are they in the Big Ten?
Yes.
Now they're on a whole different level, on par with the SEC. I think that was a huge change for USC. Now, most of those SEC schools already had good NIL, so they're already raising a ton of money. So, are they raising any extra more and more and more? I don't know, but USC was able to up their ante, get even more players, even better players than we're getting before. They could just get Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams. They spent all their money in those two pockets. Now they're able to spend their pockets across the board. D linemen, O linemen, obviously skill guys, which you can get in California, right?
Right.
They were able to go across the board, and it's glaring when you watch the UConn versus Maryland game. I don't know what Maryland spends. It's definitely more than us.
Everyone is pretty much other. I mean, in the Power Five, we're not going to come close to competing. In the group of five, we're competitive with what we spend, but we're still behind.
I'll tell you how glaring. So we have a good friend that lives literally down the block from us. Father played for New Hampshire. Okay.
Yes.
And he was a lineman there. And you know how good New Hampshire was during the Chip Kelly era and everything. Well, New Hampshire went down to Central Florida and got, spanked. And they are trying to raise money in NIL now. They're saying,
really?
Yes. And that's an FCS program, right? So that tells you if New Hampshire is making a plea.
If UNH is serious about doing it, yeah.
What does that tell you, right? Because they want to play more or higher pro. They went in Central Florida. Central Florida spanked them. Obviously, it's FCS versus FBS, but they're trying to raise money to improve their program. So look, I know we're doing it. We're boosting it to the next level. It's crazy to have to keep having this conversation in the sense that it comes to this conversation because we are football guys. We we're probably purists, whereas the 99% of the world thinks it's. I was talking to somebody where I'd say 99%, the 99.5% of the world that isn't football players who played in college or really coach or invested in some way, like in the trenches of football. I think the rest of the world thinks it's fantastic, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not saying it's not fantastic. Kids, I think they should get money. I agree with when we had Tyler on and Tyler King, and he said they should be getting money. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But I think what's so interesting is the fact that if you really polled the rest of the world, they would say, "Man, this is exciting," because now here's a player that was over here. It's free agency on an extreme scale, and this player was over here, and now he's throwing touchdowns for this school. And last year he was at this school, right? And Notre Dame was a good example of that in the Notre Dame game, right?
Big example. Yeah.
The coach was at Duke. The coach is now at Texas A&M. The
Yep.
quarterback was at Duke.
Cutcliffe. Yep.
He's now at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yep.
Right? Not Cutcliffe. Elko.
Okay.
Elko was at Duke. Went to Texas A&M. The quarterback, his name escapes me, was the quarterback at Duke when they went to the bowl game last year. They had a great season. Quarterback at Notre Dame. They played against each other. Okay. So, but for TV, that's unbelievably exciting. For the average fan, unbelievably exciting.
No, I know. It's huge.
That means that if you want people to be excited about your program as the average fan, let's think about it. The average fan is not me and you. The average fan is not even our alumni, other guys that are players like us. The average fan is the person that puts on, UConn's on TV? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Let me see how they are. Oh, God.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
They'd love to see 100,000. They'd love to hear the announcer go, "Hey, the quarterback for UConn signed a $200,000, $250,000 NIL deal. That's part of the reason why he came to UConn. That's what makes it so exciting,
Sorry. Yep.
You're back. You're gone and you're back. But that's what makes it so exciting, And I think that's how the average fan, that went to the school, doesn't really know that much about the program. I think that's how they view it. And the second they turn that TV off in the first game, you might have lost them for the season.
That's the problem. That's the biggest problem that I see is that if you do that, you will lose them for the season and they're unlikely to come back, which is why this week against Merrimack is so pivotal. They have to draw a crowd. They have to have our audience, our following has to have a short memory, and they have to realize that we can come back from this. And the biggest growth you see is from week 1 to week 2. Now the coaches saw us against another uniform, another competition. We know what we're capable of. And I think they'll make adjustments. And I think they have enough players to put guys in the right spot to make a difference.
Well, and I think that's the big deal. And we're saying Merrimack, like we should be excited to play Merrimack, right? It's like, well, that's what it has to be. You know what I mean? We have to be excited because it's an opportunity for us to get on the right side, especially since we were not close. You know what I mean? Like if we were if we played them close, a 30-20 game, I'd say, hey, you don't want to say a loss is a good loss, but you could say we're making progress. Like we hung tough with Maryland, right? And so to me, that's a great opportunity, for if we had made progress, but we didn't. Now we really have to put the hammer down against a team who I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty certain is a weaker opponent.
Well, they played Air Force tough.
They did. You're right.
They played Air Force tough, which is scary.
It is.
So, we definitely have to take a look at that game and see what went on there, because Air Force is a pretty good program that made a bowl game last year, and they traditionally win the President's Cup, whatever the cup is, between the military schools. So to hold them down to 20 points, I think means something. At least defensively for Merrimack. So that's what worries me, because we obviously struggle on defense, but we definitely struggled on offense as well. If Merrimack has a tough defense, I want the type of statement game that Maryland just gave to us. I want us to have a home opener and drop 70 on Merrimack,
Drop
because
seven.
that's what I think we need. We need to drop 50. I mean, at least. And that's how you rectify the situation.
Absolutely, that's how you rectify the situation. There's
And
no.
that's how you gain the confidence back of your fan base. That's how you gain the confidence back from everyone who watched from the Big 12, the commission, the presidents of the schools, the coaches, because that's what it's going to come down to joining their conference, is they have to approve it, and they're going to want us in there. They're not going to want a team who isn't going to add anything to the program. They need a university to come in and has value and is going to add something to the program. If they're going to give up a piece of their revenue, then that they're absolutely going to want to see a return on that investment. And we're not going to survive. We're not going to survive another 8 years unless we're in a conference. That's my greatest fear.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. If we don't get in that conference, we're in a whole different state. We got to get in that conference. So, you know, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for us. Big deal for us. Um, I think there's a lot of things that have to improve. Um, and I don't know if any of it has to do with other. I mean, maybe offensive scheme, but and maybe defensive scheme too. I don't know, or personnel. But will we learn out of Merrimack? So let's say we beat Merrimack 50. I don't know, 40-14. Okay, we beat Merrimack 40-14. Um, what would we do for the next week? Is that going to help us for the next opponent?
It has to. It has to build that momentum that is necessary to get you going week after week after week. The problem with football, and it always used to drive me nuts, is when you play poorly, you have to wait a week before you get another crack at it again. So they have to sit with this feeling for a week, and now it's going to build. And it's going to build to the point on Saturday that it should explode, that we just got destroyed by Maryland. This isn't who we are. Let's come out. Let's do what we do. Focus on ourselves and go from there.
That's
That's what
it.
that's what I still believe. Um, but if they wallow and in self pity about it, then they will never make improvement. They'll never improve, and they'll just continue to self destruct. And that's the other thing I'm afraid of.
Randy Edsel round one. What did you guys do to really start to get your guys? You started to really get much better. What were some of the things? I feel like Dan Orlovsky was a key part of that.
Dan was everything, and I told you that after
That's pre NIL.
after my senior year, we finished by upsetting Iowa State at Iowa State, and Iowa State had been ranked all year, and I thanked Dan Orlovsky. I thanked Dan Orlovsky and Terry Colley, because they turned the program around. It was the two freshmen that made the difference. It was the two freshmen. Dan was the quarterback. Terry Colley was the running back. And without them, we probably wouldn't have had close to the success of our senior year. Now, I'm not saying it's a huge success. We were 6-6, but we were in every game. We very easily could have been 8-4, 9-3. And the reason for that, and like I told you, it's development. It's development of players. And I think that's what's been missing. Because that was the one thing Coach Edsel was good at. We were never getting the 5-star recruits. We weren't. That's just not who we were. We weren't getting those top tier level recruits. So he developed players. He redshirted them. He developed them, and that is how we had success. It once it got going from 99. That's every year he would have a litany of 50-year seniors that would play. And I think that made the difference because we would always have a veteran team. Young players rarely would play. And then he would develop them. They would play as juniors, seniors, redshirt seniors. That's what he would get out of them. Or he'd get a junior or a senior and redshirt senior year. And that's why I think we had success, because you're never going to get the 5-star recruits at UConn. If you get if you look at Randy's recruiting classes when he was there, we were horrible. we never we never had anyone special other than Dan, and we got lucky with Dan because Dan basically said, "I'm going to go to Connecticut and I'm going to make a difference."
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but that's the problem now with the NIL stuff is how do you develop players if they're not going to stick with you, if they're going to leave you, if if they're not happy after a year, in college football, what are your expectations? I mean, you're not going to play as a freshman usually. You're not. I mean, it's sometimes really hard to play as a sophomore. It's college football. It's the best of the best. It's Division I. And now you're seeing players who are getting disenchanted over that. And instead of working to get better, I'll just leave. I'll go somewhere else. And that's what has bothered me. That's what has bothered me. That's how we were successful. We developed. Oh, there he is. All right.
I made it.
EB.
Sorry about
Dave.
that.
No, that's my fault. Dave, this is Eric Bechtel.
What's up,
Bechtel
Coach?
from
Hey, how you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
He fellow UConn alum, and definitely wanted to get his thoughts about the game and things going forward. So I had him on Husky Talk. He had a great story. He's got a great company, and he definitely loves the Huskies. We just took it on the chin this weekend. But I mean, Eric, were you able to watch the game at all?
I caught a little bit of it, not the full.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even find it to watch it. I was able to go back and rewatch some of it, but that's another thing that's tough. I know they have a contract with CBS. I think that's locally in the state of Connecticut. I know you're in Jersey,
Right.
Dave's in Jersey, and you guys both had it, but I think you had it on ESPN Plus or
Plus.
right?
Yeah, Plus.
Yeah. But Dave and I were just talking. We've had 57. It's 57 new players between the 22 freshmen, 59, and 27 transfers. That's a huge roster turnover. So
what's our NIL? There were like 28 guys, I think, we brought in. This year.
Yeah, we brought in
27 guys. I think we
brought in 27 on the portal. We brought in 22 questions. I just got a good comment. In terms of intellectual capacity, how would you rate yourself relative to women in your demographic? I would say very, very low. I am not nearly as smart as any woman in my demographic. I'm in my 40s, so the women in my demographic are much smarter.
You actually read the comments. That's the hilarious.
Well, there are people, there are fans, so I can't leave them hanging. I mean, if they're going to give us their time, I will answer their questions. That's how I rate myself.
I think your intellectual capability might be at least above a mid-range, minimum.
Now,
I'm teasing. Your high intellectual capability. Don't ever sell yourself short. Don't ever sell yourself short.
But Eric, did you? I mean, their defense. I mean, they're playing a different concept that I've coached, Dave coached. I personally am not a fan of it. It got really popular after West Virginia ran it with Rich Rodriguez, and it's glaring that I don't think that we have the defensive backs and the linebackers to run this defense.
Yeah, it's.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Because we can't run with them. I mean, we have to be able to cover. We have to be. The whole point of running a 3-man front and playing a 3-5 is it's a pressure defense. You're always bringing 4 to 5. You're always bringing 5 guys basically, but you're supposed to be able to disguise those blitzes and bring the 5 from anywhere. There's so many different blitz combinations off of the 3-5. That's what made it popular. And I didn't. You can't sit back in a 3-5 and expect to have success. And that's what I'm not sure of. The other reason you play a 3-5 is you're deficient defensively on the D line. And right. I definitely saw that. Like, if you don't have 4 defensive linemen to put out there, that you're in trouble.
It was almost like they were thinking too much instead of just playing and reacting.
There's my other guest. There's Sean Rabinowitz. Hey, Sean.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Dave, this is Sean from Procyon Partners. Eric, this is Sean from Procyon Partners.
Dave, hey, Sean, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Good to see you guys.
Sean's been on Husky Talk, and we talked a little bit about the preview of this game, and we texted throughout, and Sean is a big supporter of the Huskies, and we were just so disappointed. And Sean, I was talking about defensively.
Yeah, I just heard you. Yeah,
it looked like we just don't. We struggled to match up. And when you don't have 4 down defensive linemen. If you're deficient on the defensive line area, you're going to be in trouble, because to play a 3-3-5, you have to have athletes. You have to have guys to stop the blitz, that can blitz, stop the run, and can cover, because you're going to be always in coverage situations, usually lacking, because you're going to be blitzing. It's a pressure-oriented defense.
But
That's got to be the mentality.
You got to tackle, right? Whether you're running a 3-3-5, 4-4, you have to tackle. You know, and you may be right? We may not have the athletes yet this year, but if you can't tackle, it doesn't matter what athletes you have, right?
You're absolutely right.
And that was one of my biggest things. That was a big issue last year. That was one of the things I was hoping to see improvement on. And again, like you guys were saying it when I was sitting on hold, is like a lot of turnover, right? And I mean, you guys got coming into the portal. You got freshmen, right? And so there's that learning curve of learning the defense, learning the offense, right? And it's game one, so you don't want to go too far to the right or left. But you know, just some of the basics on defense, right? Just tackling, right? Tackling in space. I didn't see that. The biggest thing for me on defense was I just didn't see any intensity. Right?
Yeah, it didn't look like they came out to play. I agree with you.
Like I just, Jim Moore is an intense guy, right? You look at the energy he's brought day one into the program. Is energy and intensity. And I didn't, quite honestly, I didn't see it on either side of the ball, offense or defense. But I mean, that was, that was just one of my biggest things, was like, you didn't tackle. And I think that's what made them look worse was, I mean, that first, that 40 or 50 yard run, I mean, don't get me wrong, that was going to be a gain, right? But that should have been a 12, 13-yard gain.
Yeah,
right? It should never have been a 40-yard touchdown, right? You got to, I mean, it's like, to me, it's just getting back to basics. It's wrapping up, right? Wrapping up. Just, we're not good enough to shoulder tackle, right?
You're
we got to wrap it up,
right.
Finish tackles. That was kind of one of my biggest things I saw on defense, and I mean, we were giving them, 5-6 yard, cushions.
Well, we're not fast enough. The bottom line is we're not fast enough and athletic enough to cover in the secondary, and that's the bind you get into, because we're not fast enough. And the other team is faster than we are, which means you're going to have a hard time tackling in space. If you're not as athletic, you're not going to be able to be able to get to a guy who's got wiggle, and that becomes an issue. And that's what I see. And that's what I've seen last year too, when teams put those points on the board on us quickly, throwing the ball. We're not athletic enough to cover in space and fast enough to run with guys. And when guys get into the open on this, they're getting in the end zone or a gigantic gain, which are backbreakers early in the game and really crush any morale if you're blitzing and but I didn't watch the D line as intently, so I can't say that I know whether they played.
I went back and watched.
Yeah, I went back and watched. No pressure.
No push.
No pressure.
And they're running a lot of RPOs too, so which puts you in a bind if they're good at RPOs, in the sense that if you're trying to get pressure and you don't get pressure, and his read on RPO is to throw and you can't cover, it's a touchdown. It's literally a touchdown. So
the other big thing I saw this year versus last year is linebacker play. Right, we had some really good linebackers last year.
Yeah, we did.
We had two studs. One who, correct me if I'm wrong, is in the league this year.
In the league, yeah. Yep.
I thought that was really apparent yesterday on Saturday, was that you didn't have linebackers flying to the ball. And when you got to that second level, when the running back got to the second level, linebackers last year made plays. And I just didn't see the linebackers making plays either this year.
And that's the risk you go with when you have two new coordinators.
Yeah.
You have two new systems coming in. You overhaul half your roster.
Yeah.
That to me, I mean, that's Deion Sanders like what you did.
Sure.
You overhauled half your roster. I love the freshmen,
Yeah.
but Dave, as you had said, recruiting wise, now it's becoming tougher for kids out of high school to find homes because teams are dipping into the transfer portal so much.
Yep.
The only guy who's been against it is Dabo Sweeney, who won't take him. But
Yep.
the freshmen, like I was telling Dave before, Eric and Sean, with Coach Edsel, we had success because he was able to develop players.
Correct.
Every freshman would redshirt, and they would work and get bigger and stronger in practice on the scout team, and it might be 2 years, but he'd get 3 good years out of them.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you saw the 2007 team win part of the Big East title.
Right.
That's why you saw the 2010 team win the Big East title and go to the Fiesta Bowl. The 2008 team, Papa John's Bowl. 2009 team goes to the International Bowl.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But that was his recipe for success. He knew he wasn't going to get the 5-star recruits. And Dave and I were talking, Eric, I'd like to ask you, because, we were looking at some of the transfers. We're getting transfers from the Big Ten. Would you rather have a guy from the Big Ten or the quarterback Evers? This is his 3rd time. He was at Oklahoma before he went to the Big Ten. Would you rather have that, or would you rather go to an FCS school like a New Hampshire or an Albany or something like that and get a stud player from that division to move up, rather than take someone who isn't playing at another massive program and we don't know why?
I'd rather take the guy that's playing.
Yeah.
You just said it. He's been at 3 schools now. So, if he wasn't at Oklahoma and wasn't playing at Wisconsin, and there's some good FCS QBs that should be, playing up,
I agree.
But I think the point you made prior about Coach Edsel was, he was getting the 3 stars and coaching them up and putting a lot of them in the league, by the way.
He sure did.
Because he had 3 or 4 years. And, we don't have that right now. It's also interesting, hearing the Big 12 rumors, popping out now, like out of nowhere, which is always interesting. And I know the commissioner of the Big 12, and I know he's really high on UConn. But, we all know it. We can't stay independent. I don't care how many NIL guys you get,
we won't last.
You go into the portal. You have no you guys know this. You've played. It's, it's about what's in the locker room. You can't tell me we have a cohesive locker room. These guys just met each other. They're playing for the first time. I think, Sean, the point you made, going through camp, and there was no energy for game 1. Listen, and Maryland's not LSU.
That's what scared me the most.
It's like, listen, if we lost that game at Ohio State, I've been like, okay, I get it, no problem. But it's Maryland.
It's a middle of the road Big Ten team.
Correct.
Middle of the road Big Ten.
The problem is UConn too, with the NIL, the way we're doing it as now. It's like a stopgap for some of those guys. So if they get here and let's say they do well, it's a stopgap to go to somewhere else.
Place. Right.
And I think, if you're not going to take Wisconsin isn't like a place that throws the ball a lot. They have big linemen. So
they run the ball.
If you're the 3rd string quarterback there, that means you're not an impact player for them. Now, a 3rd string quarterback at Ohio State in a system where they're throwing the ball a lot, that's a guy that would maybe make sense if he was the right fit, because this guy in practice is throwing the ball a lot. He's working through under a system like Ryan Days, which is very good for developing quarterbacks. And there are other places like that. Because short of that, I agree. I don't think a guy out of I don't think you're going to get what you're looking for. You'd be better off if you couldn't get a guy from Ohio State or a guy that went to a place where they threw the ball a lot, maybe down south. Then you got to go to an FCS program where a guy threw for 3,000 yards or 4,000 yards and say, hey, listen, this is an opportunity to upgrade, and you might get away with paying them a reasonable amount versus an excessive amount, and you might have immediate production. They already produced. The difference between FCS
it's proven.
and FBS is okay, I got to adjust to the speed a little bit. Maybe these guys are a little bit faster and a little bit bigger, right? But the scheme schematically, they're scholarship players still. Yeah. So schematically, they can do the job. It becomes okay, can they adapt to the speed of the game, to the size of maybe a little bit bigger players? And if they already did it at FCS, there's a pretty good chance that they could do it. And you probably wouldn't have to spend as much if we're in that stopgap version also from a paying standpoint where we can only pay so much, right? So, that's the thing I think we have to evaluate. I don't know, if that becomes above the coach's, it's not above his pay grade, but philosophically, how are we working that with NIL,
Well, but we don't have a choice, right? Yeah, like we don't have a choice. We have to, right? Like that has to become part of, every coach's, or they have to figure out in Moore's administration, who's going to handle that, right? Because this isn't changing anytime soon. So it's not like we can, and look, everybody's right. Edsel did an amazing job coaching people up. That's gone, right? You're not gonna be able to do that anymore, right? So you got to accept the new reality and figure out. And I think to Eric's point, right, like we got some great guys in, right? Like, some quality athletes on that field, but they're not playing together, right? And how do you is that a coaching thing? Is that a captain leadership thing? How do you bring them all together, right? And also know that
a lot.
You're almost building something 12 months at a time, right? I think with the transfer portal and where things are, the roster this year, I know the roster is completely drastic than it was last year. That roster 12 months from now is going to be, it may not be the same either. And how do you continue to kind of see what's on the other side of the hill? And I think, if Jim Mora is not doing that, or if his assistant's not doing that, and again, I don't know if that's a role yet, but someone's going to have to manage that kind of influx and how you bring guys together, because they've been together for 6 weeks, and I just didn't feel like they're playing as a team, right? So even if you go out, you get the best guy, and I think Ever showed some some strong possibility. You got to have 10 other guys around him.
He came out because of an injury, though, correct? I thought he came out in the third because he was injured. No? Okay.
Evers did? Evers came out?
Yes.
Yeah. He did come out briefly. Yeah, he did come out because they switched.
Because Fagano finished the game and played pretty well, but that's why.
Was it an injury or was it?
I thought it was an injury, but like I said, I can't find much news.
If it wasn't, it was a good game and a good opportunity to get another guy reps, right?
No,
and just he was. Evers I thought came out and moved well. His wide receivers dropped the balls, right?
they did.
He threw some good balls, right? And
he threw some good long balls. I thought his long ball was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he threw some pretty good across the body balls that weren't on the mark. But I would have thought a Division I receiver should have caught the balls.
Especially the transfers that they got.
These guys were transfers. These guys were transfers. One of the guys was the kid from Purdue. I thought he had 2 or 3 big drops that,
Sheffield.
Very, very catchable balls. That's what that's what scared me, right? It was. There were some bright spots too. I thought the offensive line got some actually good push, right? If you looked at point of contact, point of impact, they moved people off the ball. But the little things, catching ball, right? Makes or breaks downs, right? There were some third
Yeah.
down balls that he threw. They were there. They were there. Those,
Yeah.
those are catchable.
Yeah. 6 of 17. I agree. Eric and Sean, this is, my opinion. I believe the offense centers around Cam Edwards. I think Cam Edwards getting 5 carries is criminal.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's the guy that you have to ride.
Yeah.
I think you have 2 good running backs. I think that is your key to success. Hand the ball off, give it to your guy, just feed him. Just feed him. And I was curious what offense they were going to run. I didn't know if they were going to be a shotgun team or be under center. And they were in the gun most of the time. So that kind of limits what you can do in the run game. I mean, you can run power and stuff, but it was mostly zone, and you can run zone, but unless you have the guys to cover people up and get to the second level and get to those linebackers, then zone's not going to work. I think gap schemes are a little bit easier. You just block your gap up to the linebacker. Block your gap up to the linebacker. You get good double teams up to the linebacker, and that's what Randy used to run. Randy was a big, he ran power and he ran counter. Power is where you block down, pull the guard. Counter, pull the guard and tackle, or pull the guard and tight end. And the gap schemes are good against the blitz. When I coached, our check to any blitz, whether it was coming to us or coming away from us, was counter or power, because they were safe against the blitz. You could call it and haul it. So that's the other thing. I couldn't tell if they were checking plays at the line, if they were packaging like 2 plays together. I think that also it makes a huge difference offensively. But Eric, what do you think of the running game? Because I think Cam Edwards getting 5 carries is just criminal. Now, I understand they were down, but 5 carries, he's your guy.
Yeah, you got
like everything I've heard about, he's your guy.
You got to run the ball. I mean, QB was 6 for 17, even though there were some drops. The passing game wasn't working. Sean just said the line was getting a push. It is odd that they didn't run the ball that much.
Yeah. And because I heard their tackles are pretty good.
Their tackles, that's who I watched, Steve. I thought their tackles played well. Their guards, when you talk about running power and pulling guards, but both the right and left tackle, they got out in space. There were a couple times where they got out in space, they let it, they got push up front. But I think it's hard if you're a coach, right, and you're down 14 and 21-0.
No, I know you got to throw it.
It's hard to get 3-4 yards at a clip, right?
And the defense is getting gassed because they're on the field a lot. It's possession, right? You want to keep the time and the clock moving. We just have enough of that.
Yeah, and I was looking at that, and the time of possession. Maryland had it for 34 minutes, and I think we had it for 27. And the other glaring thing was Maryland had 248 yards rushing.
Yep.
And they weren't like I didn't think they were trying to run the ball. I mean, it seemed like they were throwing it in there when they could. They still had it.
I do think it'll be interesting to see where Maryland comes out in this year. I think they were better than I thought they were going to be. I thought offensively they were pretty good. I thought that quarterback was not bad.
He was 20 of 27.
Yeah, and I thought their offensive line was pretty good. They were big up front. I do think they were pretty good. So as much as I think UConn didn't show improvement from last year, it'll be interesting to see where I get it. They're not LSU. but I think they were better than I've seen Maryland playing in the past couple of years. I just felt like they had more athletes, certainly on defense, right? I thought they had some really good linebackers, secondary, one or two good defensive linemen. I think you might find that they're a
Well, they won
uh,
8 games last year. I mean,
yeah,
they
and,
were
and
they were
and they'll come
8 and
back,
5.
yeah, yeah. So I
Um,
mean, but
And
yeah,
they
I
had a
mean,
great quarterback the last 2 years with Tagovailoa, so,
yeah,
this
you
was the
know,
first year without him,
yeah.
and the guy that they brought
I
in
think
20 for
defensively
27.
I would agree with that. I think offensively, he's always been an offensive guy. I think they've always
Oh,
been pretty
Loxley
good.
is, yeah.
Yeah. But defensively, I did think they looked better. That was their weakness the last
yeah,
couple of years. They could score, but they
yeah.
would struggle defensively. And they were getting shootouts, even if they were better than the team they were in shootouts. But Maryland this year did look. Now that's the question. Are they actually good on defense, or are we bad on offense? I don't
Right,
know.
right,
Right.
But they definitely looked. They looked like they were improved on defense, Maryland.
yeah,
Sure.
Um, what we were talking about looking forward,
Yep.
Merrimack, they played Air Force tough,
yeah,
which is scary. 20-7, I think it was. I think that the biggest thing we need to do is to come out and Maryland. It has to be like the Maryland game. We got to win 50-7. If
Yeah.
we can come and send a message and excite our fan base and bring them back, I think that it will mean everything. I really do. Because if we lose our fans early, we're not going to get them back. We have to come out. We have to put, like you said, the intensity, pedal to the metal,
yeah.
throttle them, and
Yeah,
send a
you can't
message.
you can't take your foot off the gas. I mean, if
No.
you just got to hammer them. I agree, and especially it's at home. So you gotta
Yeah,
you know
that's it
no
right
mercy,
there.
no mercy in that game in
And
my mind.
the fans will come out. It'll be a good crowd. And you gotta do exactly what Maryland did. You're home for your first home game, and you got to put on a show and get people excited.
Yeah,
And that was the thing with the schedule. I was happy with the schedule. I know a lot of people were disappointed. I was happy because I felt it was teams that we could compete against.
yeah,
I didn't
winnable ball games.
see I didn't see anyone on that schedule that was going to blow us out. That, like I mentioned, the Michigans,
Tennessee.
the Tennessees, the
Yeah.
Clemsons.
Yeah,
I never expected Maryland to drop 50 on us, but they did. But you got Merrimack and you got Buffalo. Those are 2 winnable games.
yeah,
And momentum is hard to stop. Momentum is everything. So if we can get that momentum built, if we can get it stronger, if we can get people believing, and like I told Dave, coaches all have different philosophies. They all have different styles. They all think theirs are the right way. But the bottom line is, you can have any philosophy you want. As long as the kids buy into it, you will have success.
yeah,
If they believe in it, if they play with confidence, if they play fast, if they hit, doesn't matter what your philosophy is. They're bought in and they're going to win and they're going to win. So I think that obviously short memory, you lick your wounds, you watch the game tape. I think, you know, when I used to coach in games like this that didn't happen, that were blowouts or bad, I wouldn't even put the game on. I wouldn't even watch the game with my guys because we knew what happened.
yeah.
I didn't think it was productive to rewatch it. I wanted to move on to the next opponent. I said, you know what? It happened. It's over. We can't change it. Watching the game isn't going to change the mistakes that you made. I'd probably go over maybe 10 plays that I thought that my guys really screwed up, and then it would be on to the next team. And I think I hope they do that, because I don't think there's any point in sitting back on this game and just feeling sorry for yourself.
No.
Nobody else will.
Clemson's not. Clemson got hammered by Georgia. They're not sitting back, right? You got to come out and compete. I mean, I think your point in the schedule, Steve. We have six straight home games, right?
Yeah, we have 7 overall. That's why I said. I mean,
7 and 6 straight. So if you can win
is it
a
really
couple of
6
these
straight?
early games and
Yeah.
you come into some positive momentum and play 6 straight games at home, I mean, that's how you get your base energized, right? Coming back every week,
Absolutely.
winning games in front of the hometown crowd. I think that helps, but you got to get past Merrimack, right? And you got to put the wood to Merrimack.
No, but I think you're right. Merrimack for sure. Buffalo. If they can do something against Syracuse, you have to maximize the 6 home games that you have in a row. There's very few teams in the country that have that kind of schedule.
Yeah.
And independents can schedule themselves. God bless Benedict for doing that.
Agreed.
But this is such a pivotal, important season that we cannot afford to be a 3-9 team again. We can't afford to be 4-8. We have to have at least 6 wins. We have to show progress. We have to show that we can raise the NIL money, and we have to show that we're going to go into the Big 12 and make a statement. Because if we lose this opportunity with the Big 12, I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know where we go from there.
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to lose the opportunity right away. So, but the key is to perform at minimum decently, because what you have is basketball. Obviously, the Big 12 wants basketball. There's no doubt they want UConn basketball because you got men and women, and all the other sports are obviously pretty good at UConn at minimum, right? So you're going to get that. Football is the big question mark, but I think if we perform decently well and they feel like we can compete, it doesn't mean that we have to succeed right away, but can compete where every game isn't a blowout type of thing, then I think there's no reason for the Big 12 not to take us in because of basketball. Now, basketball, the way it was structured, right, is basketball doesn't go for a long time.
2030, right?
2031, yeah.
2031.
They would be the last to go. We would go, I think, in 3 or 4 years. They would give us some time to continue to upgrade, so we would be able to compete at a higher level, and I think that's great. We had a comment here that says Mora is too soft. I'm sorry. I don't think Mora is soft at all. I think Mora has done the most with less than anyone. And to bring us to a bowl game.
That again for me. Hold on. What is it? The most with what?
Less. He's done more with less.
That's his job as the coach. This is college football. This is not like high school. Here's your high school, Newington High School, and here's the players that are coming into you this year, and do the best you can. Some years you win a championship. Some years you don't have guys.
Right.
This is college football.
It is. But he's on the low end of the NIL stuff.
That, to me, that is all part of your job. Like if the people in NIL at UConn, let's say the group that we're working with, they're trying to figure it out, right? Okay, we think we need $1 million. We think we need this. The coach has to go, and that was the reason why early in the podcast they brought up that
the general manager,
UNH is reaching out to their FCS, and they're reaching out to their alumni because I have a neighbor that played at UNH. And it was a lineman there, and they just played Central Florida and got killed. UNH is reaching out, pleading with people to raise money, right?
Yeah.
Where are we? This and it comes from the coach. UNH's coach wants to build their program up. Now they may only be FCS, right? But
they're always good. They're always a powerhouse.
They understand there's some money that they have to spend too, even at their level. They want to be able to go to a Central Florida and not get blown out, because that means that more teams will want to play them and pay them to come and play them. Maybe Ohio State will pay them $5 million if they're good enough, right? So, or 10, I don't know what they pay now, but whatever it is. The big thing is that UConn, and I don't know, Mora may be doing this. I don't know everything.
I don't know his involvement.
But the bottom line is that has to be a cohesive thing between the coach, the athletic department, and NIL, and it has to be. One of my only issue with UConn is and I went there, and you guys all went there. We all want to make everybody happy at UConn. We don't like to break any eggs. Nobody likes to offend anybody. No one wants anyone to get mad at each other, right? And what happens is in basketball, because Gino and Calhoun kick down the door, they don't have to worry about that anymore, right?
Exactly.
Has an opportunity to develop on that. We need in football to kick down the door, guys to kick down the door that will do that. I think
Sharks.
I think Holtz did that at the end of the, before he left at 1AA, and I thought Randy did that in round one. Round two was a different situation. Round one, we need someone again to kick down the door, because it's a new era of football, and we've been lucky in basketball that Hurley's able to build off of and be able to seize off of what Calhoun did. Even though there was a time when we had a couple of years where we were okay, but he was still building. I mean, Kevin Ollie still won a national championship, with
Calhoun's guys, but that's okay.
Exactly.
Here's my take. It's with basketball. When we were in the American Conference, we wouldn't have 2 national championships. We wouldn't have the players that are coming in. That's what's happening in football right now. And that's why the Big 12 is so important, because if you don't make that move, football's going to die, guys.
That's what I feel. I feel by 2030 it's dead.
And I find it ironic that Brett Yormark, who's the commissioner of the Big 12, is trying to convince his presidents, because he wants the most dominant basketball.
Exactly.
He needs the East Coast from a television. He talks about the 4 corners.
I saw
which is the way they did the West Coast expansion. So UConn becomes his number 1. But those presidents and athletic directors are sitting there saying, these guys play football. And to me, that's BS. We already proved it when Lou moved us into the Big East.
Absolutely.
We were in the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. We had 40,000 people in there when Michigan came in.
We have a proven record. You're right.
Day one at the rent. So I think it's brilliant that they're saying, okay, we're going to give you 5 years. You give Jim Mora 5 years to recruit kids, saying we are going to be in the Big 12.
That's true.
It's like going from the American back into the Big East in basketball. And then the 5 years, I think, will get the alumni and the fan base and the corporate support to say, okay, guys, if Ohio State's spending $20 million, in the portal, we don't need that, but we have to raise more money so he can get the players. Because you give Jim Mora the players, we're going to win. And we get in the Big 12, it's dollars and cents, but you need to have that vision. We cannot stay independent.
No.
To your point, Steve, he is doing more with less.
Yeah.
He is a really good coach. But
I agree.
Listen, you guys coached. How many times did you up a team that outmans you? You can out scheme a certain amount versus athletes and bigger kids, on the field. But I think we have to make it happen.
Dave's point is very valid, though, and this is something that Cully and I talk a lot about. Is the lack of engagement that UConn athletics has in general, right? They get it on men's and women's basketball, and people are still donating. you're not getting it in the rest of athletics, right? And I'm not sure that, yeah, recruiting will help, but I'm not sure just by joining. And I'm not saying I think the Big 12 is a good idea, and it's the right direction. But at the same time, we have to increase engagement significantly, and
Yeah, it's
UConn's
huge.
got to UConn has to figure that out, because um, and it's not just winning, right? If you
No,
look at when we were in the Big East, if you look at dollars raised, for the football program, other than, you look at the Burton family, where'd the money come from? And
10
in order
people.
to, in order to compete, it's not just going to take, recruiting, and, part of that is NIL dollars, but it's just overall engagement. And I think Jim Moore has done a little bit of that, but I don't also know that they have the infrastructure to do that right now. Right.
They
I don't
don't.
think they have. I think Jim Moore would be willing to go out there and hit it. I don't think athletics
It's
has the infrastructure to go out and mass fundraise for a program like football. I
like,
just,
yeah, like Eric, wouldn't it be like they say congressmen, they do their job and then at 4 o'clock they get on the phone and it's dialing for dollars.
Correct.
They just dial to raise money.
Yep.
And that would be like what Mara would have to do. He'd have to get on the phone and dial alumni and ask for donations and to
Right.
be in the NIL.
or he's got to hire someone to manage,
Well,
right? Or
yeah,
UConn has to
Listen,
hire
are you
someone.
gonna, as a former alum, or whether you played a sport or not, if you got a phone call from
the head
David
coach.
Benedict or
Yeah,
head coach versus some junior person in the athletic department that just got hired because that's
yeah.
the person they're going to have dialing for dollars. Come on. The thing that drives me crazy, we should have 100 former football players on the sidelines at every game. They
I've
don't
said
do
that.
it. They don't
No,
do it. They don't
no,
want to give you a field pass. Like, it's like
no.
the craziest thing in the world. Like, if I was Jim Mora,
And
I
there's
would
3
just
people in
say,
the stands.
I'm going to make my own rules here. Like, you have, and he's great. They do the podcast where he'll come on and do the Q&A a couple times a year, which is really great. But you really need to get all those guys. I mean, half of my teammates from the 80s are still in Connecticut. I mean, it's like, they just got to do a better job of building that excitement. I mean, listen, you got to get the basketball. You just got to get everybody all in to build it the right way.
I firmly agree with you.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest thing I learned on Husky Talk. And it's frustrating to me that there's alumni who haven't had engagement with the university, and we're talking 10, 20 years.
Right.
Like someone like Dave was a pioneer of running camps in New Jersey for recruiting and then expanded all over the country. UConn recruits New Jersey. They should be in contact with Dave. Who's this kid? Who's this kid? Who do you think we should take from this school? And find out those top targets in Jersey. And you have a resource there who has a proven track record. Dave's worked with 6, 7 Heisman Trophy winners. I mean, you can't match that. And you're not using him as a resource. And you have alumni who are disgruntled because they feel forgotten. They feel abandoned. They feel
Dave,
left out.
you'll appreciate this. I live in Bergen County, so I'm in the triangle of Bosco,
Yeah.
Bergen,
Of course.
Jones. I'm helping Russo out at Paramus Catholic right now.
Russo's from my hometown.
I can't tell you how many times I've had kids and like just to get a coach. And I live here. I'm like, hey, you want to come have dinner at my house? It's crazy. Like it's
Oh, wow.
it blows my mind. Like just the process of no, we're good. We got that guy. Like that drives me nuts.
I can tell you, one thing that's interesting, and it doesn't have to be like I always say, it doesn't have to be me per se, but like what Rutgers did, Schiano round 1. Now he doesn't have to do that because he has he has the big $10. He's got
Right.
the program going in the right direction. The first time when he was in the Big East, Shiano, the guy's name who used to always visit me and sit down in my office and go through players, was Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley used to, this is when Jeff was young, Jeff was probably 30, that age group. Like, he was a fast riser at the time. Jeff Hafley used to come in and we would pull out, we literally, I'd go on the computer and he'd be like, okay, from the camps that you went to around the country, let's start with the Northeast. Like, who did you think were like slam dunks? Who did you think were like maybe guys that had the right height and size, but maybe are down the line guys? And we would go through it. We would literally go through it. He sat in my office. We would go through and just talk about it and be like, and then he would spitball guys that maybe didn't come to my camps, because I was from New Jersey. He'd be like,
Right.
hey, do you know this kid? Ryan Day, when I was a head coach in North Jersey, Palisades Park, I had a quarterback that ended up going to Villanova. And Ryan Day used to, when he was at Boston College, used to come down and sit with me, and we would just watch. He would make believe he was watching my guy, because my guy was going to be an FCS guy. But he'd hang out with me, and we would talk about. He would talk about 2 seconds about my guy, and then about an hour about the players that he was possibly interested in North Jersey that were possible guys. Did I see them? What do I think about them? And he would do that with other coaches too, probably. But I'm saying, utilize the resources. It was no coincidence to me that Hafley was going to move up as fast as he did. It was
Right.
no coincidence to me that Ryan Day was going to move up as fast as he did, right?
Yeah.
He understood how to get information from people that might have some information that could help him. It didn't mean I always did have information. I may not, there might have been times I didn't have any information that could help him, but he leveraged those resources. And he probably had 15 resources like that
Right.
they utilize, right? And I think that's the thing that will help you. Obviously, NIL will help. Obviously,
Yep.
there's no doubt being in the Big 12 will be a huge thing. I think about it how the SEC has leveraged football to be good at basketball. That's what Big 12 would do
Exactly.
for us down the line in football. But Alabama used to be nothing in basketball. All that money pouring in. Now Alabama is one of the top
Turn it
programs
around.
in basketball, right? And it goes across the board. North Carolina did that to leverage to get better at football, right? Basketball.
Right.
So the conference can definitely, I agree, can definitely help with that, as long as we have the idea that what Sean said, the engagement is a huge thing. Like, if
Which we
we
don't
are
have.
willing to engage, like, I mean, you don't have to know much about Hurley to know that's just him by nature, right? That's
Right.
just him by nature. I don't know Mora well enough to know that maybe him by nature, but Hurley, that's just who he is. Like, he's a New Jersey guy from Jersey City. Like, he's going to talk to anybody who want to talk to him about basketball, and he's willing to do that. And that, obviously, he's a fantastic basketball coach. There's no doubt about that. But he also understands, how do we get the right guys in, and that allows him to be super hard on his guys. I mean, listen, he's tough on his
Coaches
players.
and tough.
Like,
Yeah.
he's super tough, and obviously Gino is super tough on the girls, right?
Yep.
But it allows him to, because he gets the people that fit his program, those guys that are really good players that can come in, and that's obviously what Moore is going to eventually, need if he's going to be able to be successful. Whatever Moore's personality is, hard, relaxed. Everybody, coaches have different styles, and it can all work as long as they have the guys that fit their personality, their program. Because if it doesn't fit, then you just have this never-ending transfer thing that, you're a continuous wheel of transfers that will never exactly fit what you need, and I think all of these,
And we're also going to lose our best 1, 2, 3 guys, who are going to go to the next level and go into the portal, and we're going to lose good players too. So having the conference, I think, will stop that exodus, which hurt us this year. When you lose a couple kids, that jump up. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. Sean, I know you got to bounce in a couple minutes. I just wanted to get your last thoughts, just on the Maryland game in general, and then going forward as we look to Merrimack and Buffalo. what do you see? I mean, because everyone says the biggest improvement is from week 1 to week 2. Do
Yeah.
you see us putting it behind us and just pouring it on Merrimack and building the momentum, or do you see us kind of going backwards and now it's the start of just a dreadful season?
It's the unique thing about college football. You start brand new every year. You have no idea what to expect, right?
Very
Out of any
true.
teams, right? How many
Very
times do
true.
we see someone ranked in the top 10? They end up out of the top 25, right?
Always happens.
So, you see some things you're disappointed in. Short-term memory, right?
Yeah.
Prepare. You get back to Connecticut on Saturday night, and
Yeah.
you go to work, and you got a
Yeah.
week to get things done. You got a week to improve. Um, you know, they have the talent. They
Right.
do.
I
Maybe
agree.
they don't have the athletes to compete. To run a 3-3-5. But even the athletes they have, they should blow Merrimack out. I know they played Air Force tough. I know that, but I do want to believe that they have a significantly better talent. And look, they got Jim Mora, right? And I really do believe in Jim Mora and what he's doing with that program. So I think they get better this week. They learn from those mistakes, and they bring it to Merrimack. The scary thing for me, right, is you look back a couple years. They get blown out. I can't remember the first game they get blown out, and then they go play Towson, right? Who we should have beaten, who I still think we were a better team then, but we just got caught in a gap. And
And that was Coach Ambrose was there.
coach,
Yeah.
coach, yeah, right, and so that's what makes me nervous if we
I
don't come
never
in
heard the end of that one.
and hammer Merrimack. Then I think we really have to readjust and think about where we're going.
So this really is like probably the most important game of the year. I mean, this is
I
going to
think
set the
every game
tone.
for them. I think every game
It
this year
is.
for them
Yeah.
and
Pivotal.
and if you look in the future, every game is critical for them this year, right? And
Yeah.
I want to win every game. You don't have to win every game, but you got to compete.
You got to compete
Exactly.
100%. You got to.
Exactly. No, it's showing that you have the players to compete, showing that you belong, and showing the Big 12 so the commissioner doesn't have to go and bow down to the presidents and beg for them to let UConn in. They should be kissing our feet at begging us to come in.
And showing that you're well
I really,
coached and prepared, right?
I really hope that happens.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
really
also
do.
coached and well prepared, right?
Yes.
And that's an improvement I'd like to see for Merrimack too, is coach well prepared and some intensity.
Yeah. 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 The intensity wasn't there all around.
Let's see
But-
some energy.
Energy. Yep.
But Sean, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate you giving us your time and your feedback on the Maryland game and Merrimack. Sean is with Procyon Partners, a proud sponsor of Husky Talk. Specialize in wealth management, retirement planning, and employee benefits. So if you need anything, President Sean Rabinowitz is your guy. And when I make $1 million, he's going to get me a Tesla.
We're gonna shoot for more than a Tesla, Cully. But thanks for having me.
All right,
Steve,
Sean.
great
Sean,
speaking with you.
take care.
Take care.
Have a good Labor Day. Yeah. I agree. The biggest thing, like he said, alumni engagement. And is it having 100 guys on the field? Is it planning a tailgate? Is it planning an alumni event? Is it something like that needs to be done? Or, I mean, because it can't be 1 week. I mean, it's got to be every week, doesn't it?
You would think.
Yeah, it's got to be something every week that is going to ensure that you're going to draw your alumni back and you're going to make them feel special and you're going to make them appreciated. And then you have an alumni base, whether it's athletes or non-athletes. I mean, it's 20,000 kids go to UConn.
Yep.
Between all the campuses, right? And that's why I had been talking with Mike Burton bleedingblueforgood.org is their NIL company. You get a tax deduction for donating. If we get, and that's what he said, he raised the $1 million that they raised between, realistically, I think 10 people. He
Right.
said, he was just trying to get the smaller donations. He said, Steve, I don't need $5,000. He said, if I can get $200 from someone, if I get $500 from someone, that the smaller donations will make the difference, because we have the alumni numbers to where it will add up. And Dave, what you said with TCU or SMU raising $150 million in less than 24 hours when they announced
1 week. One
1 week.
Oh, 1 week. Jesus.
Yeah, when they moved to the
ACC.
ACC, they raised $159 million, $100 million in the first week. And part of
How
it
is
was
that even possible?
they were building an indoor complex.
Facility.
Yeah, that was part of the money. But what was striking was how they already had it on like speed dial, ready to go. Like as soon as
Listen, it was fact. They gave up all the TV revenue, which is tens
They
of
did?
millions of dollars for 10 years. That's why
I
they
didn't
raised
know
the
that.
money. They gave up all. Why? Because they couldn't compete in the American. They had to
didn't know
get
that.
out. They wanted to get in a big time. They had the alumni ready to go. A lot of oil money down there. So
Right.
but it now allows them to say, we're in the ACC, we're going to major bowl games, we're in a major conference, we can recruit.
And they're going to make tenfold that money that they lost.
Okay.
Correct.
That makes sense. Okay. So they said they got an agreement with the ACC. The ACC is going to take them, but they're not getting a cut of the TV revenue
For 10 years.
For 10 years. And they
And by
got
the way,
everyone
that's like
excited to join.
$40 million
a year. I know. That's what irritates me. Rutgers goes 4-8 and gets $40 million for it.
Crazy.
That's I did not know that. Did you know that, Dave, that they were giving up the television revenue?
I didn't know how long. Well, they had to, in order to get out of
out of the AAC.
Well, plus the other schools in the ACC didn't want to take all those schools. And they said, please take us. You can keep the TV money for 10 years.
But that's how much
we'll take care of ourselves, but let us in your conference. And then
they had everybody lined, which was great, was how they had everybody lined up to fill the gap. Right?
Did.
Well, they had a plan, obviously.
There's a lot of money down there in Dallas. A lot of money.
A ton. It's amazing, and they're gonna make 10 years from now. They're gonna be making so much more money because of it. I mean, it's gonna pale unless college football implodes completely.
Well, I do think that Dave and Eric, there is going to be a reckoning.
Yeah,
because there's just too much money going around with the NIL, with the TV.
It's hard to know.
Well, they're back. The Supreme Court voted they're backdating NIL payments to 2017 or 2016. They're paying kids from television revenue because they didn't have an opportunity to make NIL money. So they won that lawsuit, and they want to obviously structure the NIL so it's almost like a salary cap.
Where are they backdating for me and Eric? CTV?
Yeah.
No, they're not going back that far.
From the public network back when we probably had to pay to go on the station.
We don't get that. They're not going back that far. But yeah, you're right. But that's what they're doing. They're backdating it, and the NCAA wants to regulate the NIL. They want to put like a limit, like you can pay a kid $100,000 a year or $1 million a year. That's the highest. But now there's already precedent set that if they do try to regulate it and go to court, it's going to go to court and they're going to lose.
Yeah.
That's the issue. So UCONN, they got to raise the money. That's the biggest thing. I mean, the quarterback Evers is, as far as I know, from what I've heard, the highest paid NIL guy, and he's getting $50,000 a year. Most of the guys are at $25,000 or $20,000 a year,
Yeah.
and ideally, realistically, that's not going to get it done. You're going to have to pay players in the minimum six figures to, if you're a starter in a Power 5 conference,
Yeah.
at minimum, you're going to have to pay them six figures. If you're a star in a Power 5 conference, you're looking at seven figures. I mean, that's why they lost three of their best players this past year. They lost their tight end, they lost a linebacker. I can't remember who the third guy was. They lost three of their, I thought it was maybe a running back. Three of their top players they lost in the transfer portal because they received better NIL money.
Yeah.
So that's why. But I'm hoping, I'm hopeful that things will turn around. I'm hopeful that we will come back, send a message. I want us just to play with a chip on our shoulder, nothing to lose. Let's go out, dominate Merrimack, and that will be the start of the build of momentum that will rise throughout the 6-game homestand and get us some wins. Ohio, Syracuse, Georgia State. Get those wins, and 6-6, 7-5. Great. I would do cartwheels down I-90 or down I-87 or down the Garden State Parkway for you guys in Jersey if they finish 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great. And then basketball, obviously, basketball goes out. They have a chance to three-peat. The women, Paige stays healthy. They can win a national championship. So now you have a winning football team that's competitive, that has a chance to be even better. You obviously have two national championship basketball teams. Who wouldn't beg us to come to their conference?
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
hopefully,
Dave?
at least the Big 12. That'll be a start if we get
Well,
them.
I mean, I don't
It
know.
only takes one.
It only
I
takes
mean,
one. Then you might get Big 12 says yes. Maybe somebody else does say. Maybe an ACC says, hey,
well, I would rather us join the ACC.
ACC is going to lose.
Everyone says the ACC is going to implode.
State.
Yeah. Everyone has said the ACC is the next one to implode. Because if Clemson and Florida State win their lawsuits and bolt to the SEC, that's it. I mean, that everyone thinks the ACC is going to be a mess. So
I guess
I don't.
College football probably is eventually going to be like 2 or 3 conferences,
but then there goes the magic of it. That's why I said everyone.
I think
you beat up the Big
East.
East.
I said, to us the guys who played football, who are involved in sports like that, like we have like a different kind of caring. I don't know that the casual fan who just wants to watch 2 great teams on TV, and I could be wrong, care as much. Like they're fans of Ohio State, they're fans of Georgia, they're fans of those teams, and they're regular people who just want to watch high level football.
It's definitely weird watching USC beat LSU last night, and that's a Big Ten win over the SEC.
Huge. Huge. It blew my mind.
And USC got incredibly better from one year to the next, especially defensively.
They got a new DC. Yeah, they got a whole bunch in place there.
Yeah.
But the problem is, okay, all these guys are joining the conferences. You're not, Texas isn't going to be 12-0 every year. Oklahoma's not going to be 12-0 every year. Now, because of the SEC and Big Ten becoming so large, everyone's going to beat up on each other. So everyone thinks it's great for college football. The parity, I think, is going to be gone. Like it was the same thing that happened with the Big East that I told Dave that I complained about. We dismantled the Big East. It started in 2004, I think, with BC and Virginia Tech were the first, or Miami, BC, Virginia Tech, and Miami were the first to leave. But everyone was pumped, like, oh, they're going to make so much money. Oh, they're going to be so much more successful. Well, guess what? None of them have won a conference championship. None of them have played in the BCS Bowl other than BC in 2007 when they had Matt Ryan. Everyone who thought the grass was greener on the other side, had the old Big East remained intact, I think it'd be a great conference. Pitt, West Virginia, Syracuse, Rutgers, UConn. It's made. Virginia Tech, Miami. That was a great conference. And it got broken up because of greed, money, dollars, and cents. And that's what started the free fall of no loyalty to conferences. Nobody cares about the kids because USC playing their first game, traveling to LSU. That's not a short flight. Do you think the kids are going to get back in time Saturday night to get some sleep on Sunday? Do you think they're going to be ready to go to class? I mean,
class. People, they're still going to class, the players.
That's what I'm saying. You're putting these kids, and you're not logistically looking at it. And it's not just football.
No, it's the other sports that
swimming and diving, freaking tennis, track. Yeah. They're going to be traveling. UCLA is going to travel to Rutgers. Like that makes no like they got to spend money on chartered flights for all these.
What's going to happen is going to go to 2 or 3 divisions eventually.
It is.
All these teams are going to be in these divisions, and then they're going to regionalize. You're going to be back playing the same teams you played again.
I hope so.
It's going to take years. It's going to take years for that. But
I hope they figure that out,
because it's just going to be a continuous arms race, and how many conferences are going to win in that arms race in the end? Obviously, the SEC is going to win. Obviously, the Big Ten is going to win.
Yeah.
Outside of those two, I'm not sure. In the long run, the Big 12 has done that guy has done a great job of kind of declaring that he wants to be the best conference. I mean, he rebuilt it when they tried to get it destroyed. Tried to destroy it.
They were on the cusp
of it. Two or three conferences, and there'll be super mega conferences. And basically everyone's going to end up being regionalized back to where they were at some point, because
I hope it does
go back. There's so many teams in these conferences. There's going to be
there's 16 teams in the Big Ten.
It's going to break away from the NCAA, or if it's still in the NCAA, it's like a shell holding company to basically keep everything just kind of somewhat together. But the conferences will obviously control everything. They just need the NCAA. So I don't know. They want to come down on somebody for excessive spying. And then
did you watch the documentary? You got to watch the documentary. Eric, did you watch the documentary on Netflix?
I have not, but I know you told me about it.
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my God, it is hysterical. You got to watch it.
That's what I hear.
They did the documentary on Connor Stallion stealing signs. And to be honest, I think he comes off very well. I think he comes off believable. I don't think that he's lying. The question mark becomes the buying tickets to send people to games.
Right.
That I don't know. Like he claims that he did it as a favor to friends in the military. He's like, I just do it for guys, who love football and want to watch games. That he wasn't using that. He said, I already knew the signs, but I already knew the signals before they went to the games. I didn't need anything from them. But the money that was spent, it just doesn't make sense. But when you hear how, and he's right, how he put it all together, if you study the sidelines, you definitely can tell each team has 4 or 5 guys signaling. And you can tell after a couple plays which one of them is live. And then you can tell by the signals, you see a play run 2 or 3 times, the signal for it.
Right.
Like I never watched for it. because I didn't care. Like I defend, on offense, I knew what they were going to run. I knew defensively. Okay, it's second down. This is their blitz down. Third down, we're likely going to see cover 4. They're going to play some cover 4. First down, they may blitz. Like I didn't see a necessity to learn the signals because I felt that I knew what was going to come. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But if you guys get a
it
chance,
helps
watch
for the
it.
Astros, I mean,
Well, baseball,
anytime
yeah,
you
I got
feel signals. It is and if you're really good at it and you can communicate it back to your players in an easy, effective manner, it obviously is an advantage. I mean,
Of course.
you still need a system to communicate it back to your players, but these guys figure it out. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think it's an it's an arms race, man. It's an arms race all around.
Well, it is, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope that this is the start of something special this weekend at Merrimack. We get Merrimack at home.
We need a statement.
It's the homestead.
Absolutely.
And then we had talked to Phil, I had talked to Mike Burton. We're definitely gonna plan some fun alumni events along the way, especially October 5th. I spoke with the volleyball team. They're having a massive reunion. So we're going to try to get as many fall sports involved in that as we can, have everyone come back to the rent, and they'll put on some sort of banquet or spread for us to hang out and party and have fun. And that's what they have to do. They have to welcome everyone back, make us feel wanted, and that will have help with the money trickling in and help with the alumni base, believing again and not feeling abandoned. That's what I think is most important. So,
yeah,
absolutely
awesome.
But Eric, thank you so much for coming on. I always have a ball talking with you. Thank you so much for having Ryan come on.
Yeah.
My God.
I'll get you connected with a bunch of guys.
Please do. Ryan was freaking awesome. He sent me a care package.
Yeah.
The stuff he sent me is incredible.
It's
absolutely
legit.
Incredible.
It's legit.
I've never had anything like it. It's not oily. It works. And I'm gonna when I go out there, and I know they mail it to you as well. I'm gonna do the blood test.
Yeah.
That can tell you the foods that cause inflammation.
I've done it, and I can tell you.
You did? Okay.
I did. It's unfortunately, 2 of the things were eggs and whey protein, which I've been eating my whole life. So.
Oh God.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know, but I'd rather. He was so much fun, man. I loved having him on, and he was really cool. So I am so appreciative you connected me with him. Anyone else you want to connect us with?
I got a lot of guys from my era that would love to come on.
Oh, please, yes.
Still in Connecticut, super successful, follow the programs. Like that's what we got to do. So,
Yes, absolutely.
More people connected. So
either email me or message me names or a list or whoever I can contact, whoever wants to come on. I'll do it. That's perfect. That's what we want.
You got to get the Schweitzer brothers on for sure. That'll be a fun.
Okay.
That'll be a fun one.
And Dave, I reached out to Johnny McEntee like you wanted.
Good move.
So I reached out to McEntee, and I did talk to the UCONN SID. If we do our, we'll do a second preview show for Merrimack. If we do it Thursday or Friday, he'll be able to provide one of the players that I put down. So
great.
He just couldn't. They wouldn't do it today. And they wouldn't. He wasn't doing it today.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, let's get off, and we'll see you all.
Yep.
Great show. Great
All
show.
right, guys,
Joe,
have a good
great
one.
having you
Happy
on,
Labor
Eric.
Day.
Thank you, Eric.
You're
All right.
welcome.
All right.
Bye.